human beings as a species, all human beings, with some exceptions, have certainly been making war for a long time in all cultures, meaning in all minds, because a culture is just a reflection of the mind, the individual mind. And the individual mind is just a reflection of the cultural mind. So you are here tonight because you are interested in peace in your own mind. You are not waiting for them, whoever they may be, to make peace. You are interested in peace in your own mind. And this is very good news, because the biggest wars that have been fought in trying to get them, whoever they may be, to get it together so that you can live in peace. And when you stop waiting for them and you instead shift your attention to your own mind, and you recognize the tendency to war in that, the tendency to fascism in that, the tendency to hatred, the tendency to grudge and revenge and holding on, and you recognize the suffering that those tendencies continue to deliver. And somehow, in the face of that, you notice that you want peace. You notice that you are sick and tired, fed up with the war. And maybe some kind of conscious prayer or plea for help, for understanding, for deliverance, for grace is made. Maybe it's not conscious. Maybe grace, deliverance comes to get you, knocks on your door, and says, you have a chance to be at peace. And in your willingness to take that chance, to accept that invitation to be at peace, then you have an opportunity to share this peace everywhere. I truly don't know if what we have experienced in the 20th century in terms of war will continue into the 21st. But I certainly know it will, unless each one of us in this room takes responsibility for peace within one's own self. Not waiting for someone else to get it, to change. Not waiting for someone else to forgive you so you can forgive them. Not waiting for someone else to say, I'm sorry to you so that you can forgive them. Not waiting, not postponing, but recognizing that the war, to whatever degree a war is going on within your own mind, is based on one thing, and that's the firm belief that has been supported and conditioned through endless aeons that you are a separate entity, that you are something separate from the totality, that you are something separate from me, or your parent, or your child, or your lover, or your enemy. That you are something. This is what all wars are about. Because when you believe firmly that you are something, you get very busy protecting that thing. And that protection takes all forms: territorial, sexual, personal power. And the horror and the irony is that something that you are protecting in reality doesn't even exist. Who you think you are doesn't even exist. It's a thought. And as a thought, it has huge power. That power is the mediator of the experience of reality. But that doesn't mean it exists. You look through a glass that is tinted, and reality takes on that tint. It doesn't mean reality is tinted. It means that the mediation of reality delivers the experience of reality that has a particular distortion or tint. And the distortion that people fight for, go to war for, is the distortion that I, this individual, this experience, this collection of experiences, of history, of thoughts, of concepts, of talents, of successes, of failures, that I am separate from consciousness. And that I is nothing. It does not exist. It's a story made up. As a story, there's no harm to it. It's quite beautiful, even in its horror. It's certainly entertaining. But as a belief that the story is reality, it's a huge tragedy. That's the original sin, the original mistake. The belief that the separation from the source, from consciousness, from God, is even possible because of a story, an experience of separation. The belief that that experience is reality. This is the cause of suffering. So what will be the result of this human experiment and this opportunity that ordinary humans have now, that was only granted the most extraordinary humans in the past, but now ordinary humans like you and me have the opportunity to discover that never, not for an instant, is it possible that you can be separate from consciousness, from the source of everything, from God. And to discover that directly is to then broadcast that with every breath you take, with every step you take, whether you speak or never speak again, is secondary to that broadcasting. Then we will see which way this human experiment goes. But at this point in time, in this lila called the world, called your life, you have the opportunity to discover what is deeper than human being. What is before human being, not to mention female human being, or male human being, or Australian human being, or American human being, or Yugoslavian human being. What is before that? That beingness that we have assumed is simply tacked on to human. is actually the source of human. It's the source of plant being, animal being, sentient being and insentient being, beingness. And that beingness is alive with intelligence and presence. And it wants to know itself. It has come to know itself in you, so that it can know itself everywhere. How to deal with the tyranny of the mind. So we are at least somewhat aware of the capacity of the mind to use its powers, the power of projecting, the power of grasping, the power of rejecting, the power of holding, the power of denying, to wage war. These powers are used to wage war. You can't wage peace. Peace is revealed when the war ceases being waged. And wars can be waged under all kinds of flags, especially spiritual flags. I mean, usually wars are waged at least somewhat under a spiritual, or God is on my side, or I'm holding the right flag. So the question then arises, well, what to do with this tendency of the mind to be a warmonger? How to stop that? And of course, people try all kinds of things. We've all tried all kinds of things in the spectrum of denying it and indulging it, and different degrees of each, until there is a willingness to say, I give up. I don't know how. I can't figure out how, because every thought I have that figures out how tends to be just another very subtle maneuver, strategy, technique. Waving the flag of peace, waving the flag of fellowship, but just another maneuver for me first, whether that me is individual or tribal or national or even species. So first of all, we have to see that. That must be seen. And to see the futility of trying to use those strategies to grasp or hold or keep peace. If you are willing to give up the strategies, you're willing to simply not strategize, to be aware of the tendency and yet not to follow it, not repress it, but not follow it. So huge tendencies can arise. And the willingness to be aware without following, then the mind is tamed. Where there is a willingness for the mind's attention to rest in silence, to not be doing anything, even if there is great agitation, even if there is a demand to move and do, just to see it, to experience it, and to let it be. Then the next question that often appears is, yes, but in satsang, what to do with these thoughts that come in, these thoughts of self-doubt, these thoughts of self-hatred, these thoughts of worthlessness, these cynical, contracted thoughts. What to do with them? They keep coming. So when it is seen that they keep coming, there is a very appropriate time to say, stop. Stop. I will not go down that path again. I will not follow that addiction to negativity again. I can't say when that time is for you in your mind. But if you have an idea in your mind, oh well, these are just my thoughts, these are just my thoughts, and then you have formalized the welcome to satsang as some way that actually supports another strategy for warmongering. In your willingness to tell the truth and to recognize when the same obsessive thoughts continue to spin and you are trying to get them to stop while welcoming into your heart, then there has to be the willingness to say, stop, get out. No. No is not an evil word. It's not a bad word. It's just as beautiful as yes. No. There will come a time when the yes in your heart welcomes everything, because that welcome itself destroys everything and reveals only yourself. That's why I say no one can tell you when that no must be there and when that no is no longer needed. This is for you to see. This is for you to tell the truth. This is for you to be willing to investigate and experiment and even make a mistake so that you can see. Nice to see you again. It hasn't been that long, a couple of days.
Well, my assignment, as I walked away from being with you, maybe to stop the strategy of that's out at Mars, and I'm a humble guy that can't get it and have to work for it. Now you took that away from me.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to thank you because I'm agitated.
Oh, good.
So the assignment goes on, but
So when you gave up this self-image of this humble guy working on it, underneath that was some agitation.
Yeah, it's like right now I haven't found a strategy.
Oh, this is so clear.
I don't know what to do. Really.
Yeah, so it's a very unstable place.
Yeah, it really is. It's
and
uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable, unstable, and the impulse that is in place, that we have all in place, that we've been trained to, that we organically grow into, is to find a strategy, to quickly find a strategy, because the whole organism is perceived to be a danger when there is no strategy for constructing a self-image. Yeah. So then my question to you is, can you simply be agitated without attempting to go back to that nice, humble guy, or go forward to that person who's at peace? Just to be this.
You mean agitated?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I want to stay there very long.
I understand that. I understand that. It's uncomfortable. And nobody wants to stay in anything that's uncomfortable. Maybe it's even painful. And nobody wants to stay in anything that's painful. But for the purpose of our investigation, are you willing to see how you don't want to stay there, and yet you are here to just be here without thinking about how it should be different?
Yeah, see, I'm doing that.
thinking about how it should be different? This is excellent. You have to see that.
Yeah,
You have been doing that, so perhaps you haven't seen it. But now you clearly see it. Yep, I'm doing that.
Yeah, if I'm not the humble guy, then
Uh-oh, yeah.
I don't know
That's right.
what to do with it.
That's right. That's exactly right. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know who I am. I don't know what to be. I don't know how to act. I don't know what will happen to me. I mean, humble guy, it'll always be out there, and I'll be plodding along.
Yeah.
And some days I'm good because I'm humble, but
I tried arrogant for a couple of minutes. I didn't like it. That's just not in me to do.
Very good to try it.
I've got it. Now I've really got it.
That's right. So now you haven't got it and you haven't not got it. You're in no man's land.
Yes.
That's right.
That's where
That's the gap. And all of the mind activity around that is to get out of that gap because it's the unknown.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable.
It's just right. It's just right. Everyone tries to jump over that gap with spiritual understanding or with conceptual understanding about there is no gap, there is no one to jump over, there is no anything. With Advaita Vedanta, with Buddhism, with Christianity, with Judaism, with Muslim, with everything.
Can I ask you a question?
Okay.
Now here's an example of the strategy trying to develop, or going back to the humble, I don't have it and stuff. So I get upset, agitated, and I associate that with being very far away from being centered, or I use that word like, being centered.
Being at peace.
So today I was very uncentered and agitated, and so then I'm saying, well, what have I learned? Here I've had this wonderful opportunity, and Gangaji said, here's the
Oh, here comes the humble old guy back.
I know, really. So there it is. I seem to associate learning something with remaining centered, or not following my thoughts, or not following my emotions, but I keep doing it, and then I get discouraged.
You have learned things that have helped you stay centered.
Yes?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
So
I do
we're not
better.
speaking about learning, and those are wonderful to learn. It's very useful to learn how to still the mind, how to still the body. Excellent. But this is not what we're speaking of. The possibility is to discover what doesn't need to be still to be still.
Oh, gee. I seem to lose it there.
That's right. I want you to lose it there. Because if you are holding on to even understanding that, there is an overlooking of what doesn't even need to be understood to be at peace.
Gosh.
So, what is it that's agitated?
Just my emotions and thoughts, and
Right.
the identity, like I'm agitated, and then I think, well, I shouldn't be agitated.
Right. And the awareness of that.
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Yes, that's clear. You're aware of that.
I'm aware of it.
So when you say, I am aware of it, is the I agitated, or is I aware of agitation?
No, the awareness isn't agitated.
That's right.
But I'm agitated at myself because I'm
So-
doing it. I mean, I'm getting agitated.
So you have this awareness of this, I am agitated at myself. Is the awareness of that I am agitated at myself agitated?
Let's see. Yes, like I'm disappointed. Okay, so I'm aware that I'm agitated, and that awareness is saying Don't do that.
Are you aware of something saying don't do that? I'm asking you to go back a little further in. There's agitation appearing, and part of that agitation is mental activity that's spewing forth thoughts. I don't like this, I shouldn't be this, I should be centered, I'm not getting it, I don't understand it, I'm blowing it, whatever.
Yeah, all that.
Just a little bit in from that. There's awareness of all that.
Yes.
Is that agitated?
Well, I'm aware of that awareness. I can't say that I know. If
Yes,
maybe
you
I
do.
haven't.
You do know, but you can't find it as another object to be aware of.
Another object.
It's not an object. It's not part of the agitation. It's free of the agitation. And you do know it. You just don't know it as knowledge. You know it as awareness.
Yeah. It's like I do know something. I mean, I know.
So that's the bubble you were speaking of the other night, right?
Yeah, darn.
That's the bubble. What is the darn?
It's just something's frustrating that,
So,
I mean, what you're saying is, it makes sense, it's clear.
yes, it's clear.
When you say it, it's not clear.
So listen very carefully. Speaking from that awareness, is there any real problem with the agitation?
No, it would just be there.
Now, speaking from an aspect of the agitation, is there a problem with the agitation?
No, not from, you mean the agitation.
This is even better than I thought. Great.
No, the agitation is,
So the agitation is at peace with itself.
yeah,
And the awareness is at peace with the agitation. What's the problem then?
Dan
Dan?
is the problem, because
So
I'm
what
saying,
is Dan?
well, I shouldn't be
That's
agitated,
great.
I should
What
be
is
agitated.
Dan? How do you know to name something Dan?
Oh. Man, just as soon get rid of it, frankly.
But that's part of the problem too. That's the war, isn't it?
Yeah, it is,
That's the
exactly.
war.
There it is. Like today, I'm at war.
Okay. And
So-
in the midst of this war, I'm pointing you to what's at peace. The war is at peace with itself. And awareness is at peace with the war. But Dan, so what we have to find out is, what is Dan? Who is Dan?
Oh, it's this little kid that grew up and has all these identities and
So that's the body was little once and it grew up, and the emotions were immature once and they grew.
no, they're still immature.
Yes, maybe.
They didn't grow very well.
But the awareness of all that.
Yeah, now I'm beginning to, yes. I can watch Dan do all this stuff.
That's right, because Dan's an object in your awareness. Now, is this object real? Or is it like painted on a screen?
Yeah, it doesn't seem very real because there, again, you can disprove it and I can begin to disprove.
So it doesn't seem very real when you begin to look at it,
No.
when you begin to investigate it. I wrote my granddaughter, one of my granddaughters, a letter today. It was a little card that had a spider on it, and it said, "Scary spider," because she's 4 years old now and she's starting to get afraid of bugs and things. And I said to her, If you look at something very scary up close, it won't be scary anymore. And then I put in parentheses, it might take a few looks. So what you're speaking of is you looked at Dan slightly just now,
Yeah.
and there wasn't much there. And a whole natural byproduct of that was a relaxation. Now, the moment you turn away from Dan, Dan grows in power as a scary spider. Right?
Yeah. Seems like
But now you stop right now and turn your attention to Dan and see, what is it really?
uh-oh. Here we go. You're going to take Dan away. I think there won't be anything left of me.
I don't have any
Take away my
problem
fear,
with
you
Dan.
take away Mars. No, I'm not going to have anything.
That's what it feels like, doesn't it?
Yeah, really.
It feels like if there's not a Dan there, then I'm not there. And I want to be here, even with the agitation. I don't have any problem with Dan. It's just,
I do. I mean, it seems a
well,
burden.
that's the problem.
Yeah, it is a problem.
That's the problem.
It's
And
like
the
a burden.
reason you have a problem with Dan is because you believe Dan to be real, and you believe the reality of Dan is your reality. And if Dan is not real, you are not real. But just in your willingness to investigate Dan, as you did, as you have at least 3 times since we've been sitting here, you get a glimpse of, hey, it's no big deal. It's some memory of a kid and another memory of a grown-up who's still a kid or not doing it right. Or maybe the memory is did it right and doing it better, whatever it may be. It doesn't matter, a whole mix of that. There's a belief that that's reality. That's what I meant when I said you are not who you think you are, and who you think you are will never be free. But who you are is already free. You are not Dan.
He can go. I don't.
He does go. He comes and goes.
Yeah.
He appears and disappears. When you wake up in the morning, there's no Dan. You have to construct Dan based on yesterday and all the days prior, from the moment someone said, you are Dan. And Dan is a bad boy. He's not doing it right. You gotta work harder. You gotta do better. Are you going to be punished, punished, punished?
Boy, I've heard that before.
So there's nothing wrong even with buying into it, with believing it. It's all a setup. It's all a setup for this moment of recognizing it's all a setup.
Wow. Goodbye, Dan.
Hello, goodbye. Hello, goodbye. But what is present? A Dan appears, ego appears, hello. Dan disappears, goodbye. Not Dan can't disappear, and not Dan can't appear. Because Dan becomes a scary spider then.
Okay, I'll just let him be.
That's what I meant when I was suggesting that you just let the agitation be.
Yeah.
Because Dan is agitation. Ego is agitation.
Yeah.
Because it is polarity of thought at war with itself. And in the willingness to let it be, then you are not adding another warrior to fix it, to straighten it up, called the super warrior, or the spiritual warrior, or the super ego. You're in fact just being. And if there is agitation, if there is war, well, that is here too. And in that, I promise you, you discover what is at peace, unaffected by the war, free. You discover who you are.
Boy, I feel that now.
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah.
So this is a moment, perhaps, where Dan-ness disappeared because it was investigated. But there will be a moment when Dan will appear because it's uninvestigated. In that reappearance of Dan, there is an opportunity and an invitation to investigate what is real, what is true, what is Dan, who am I? So then the ego itself becomes a vehicle for the realization of the truth of who you are. Then there is nothing that is a problem. Then everything, when it is subject to investigation, can reveal the non-existence of who you think you are and the reality of who you are. That was pretty clear, wasn't it? That's pretty clear, isn't it? This is so simple. The mind will attempt to make it complicated, attempt to make it ritualistic, attempt to make it something so that it can be owned. But who you are is free, right now and eternally. And the mind is not separate from that freedom, simply appears in that freedom as a vehicle for the realization of freedom itself. So natural. Who you are is natural. Dan is not natural. It's fabricated and put together and falls apart, and stuffing is coming out, and attempt to stuff it back in and redo it and reupholster it and take it to another expert that could fix it better.
Oh. Boy, it is tiring.
It's tiring.
Exhausting.
But it's a beautiful tiring. Because until there's a real tiredness with this, there's no possibility of actually investigating it. As long as there's still stimulation from it and belief that Dan will give satisfaction and will give fulfillment, then you're not interested in what I have to say. But your very tiredness of this struggle, this internal struggle that allows you to actually have a moment of investigation, that allows you to come forward. Jeez.
I'm very fortunate.
You are very fortunate.
Yeah.
You are
I'm
very fortunate.
Jeez.
Yes, that's the truth. And that in itself is the humbling of Dan, not this other image of I'm humble because the truth is way out there, and if I work and work and work, I'll get it. I am very fortunate. Dan-ness is hobbled in that moment. And is in fact beautiful in that moment. Because that's the truth. That good fortune, first of all, a good fortune of being in a human form with the capacity to reflect, and in that reflection to discover what is real and what is made up out of reality. You are real. Who you are is real. Who you are is reality. Yes, it's moving, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels good to
It feels good.
not give up.
It feels good to give up. That's right.
Wow.
This is the end of the war. Not somebody else coming in and fixing it and murdering it and being better warriors. this willingness to be, regardless of what is here. It's a pleasure to see you.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you. Really.
Namaste.
Namaste. I'll learn what those things mean.
You don't need to. It means same here and here.
Oh,
Same here and here.
oh, that's beautiful.
Different here, and that's beautiful too. But coming together, same here and here.
Well, I can do that.
What struck me, or what has struck me in the last couple of weeks, is that when the attack happened in New York and then the bombing happened in Afghanistan, there was a moment where people's hearts were broken so profoundly that they were open. And there was a sense of compassion that could be felt that hadn't been felt. Of course, compassion had been felt, but a deepening of that compassion, a deepening of the understanding of the insult of innocent beings all over the world, in all cultures, being killed. A recognition of that. What a moment. But then, sadly, what I have seen is because that moment is so big, and because people are, in general, deeply, deeply identified with themselves as separate entities, there becomes a kind of closing off from that and back to business as usual. I mean, that's even what our leaders say, get back to business as usual. And I'm not speaking of the economy. It won't help anyone for the economy to crash. But we cannot get back to business. And yet our minds are inviting us back to business. Our what about me business. Yes, but how about the way I feel today? So there's a moment that we can all be true to. It's still here. It hasn't gone anywhere. But in its unbearableness, our minds, I'm not talking about, you're not free to laugh, to have fun, to sing. All of that's not business as usual. The business as usual is the individual suffering, the individual story about me and my needs, and who didn't meet them, and who's not meeting them, and who won't meet them. That's the business as usual. So I remember there was a quote once, maybe it was from Faulkner, something about mankind will always choose the familiar, hell, rather than the unknown. So in this moment in time, there is a huge unknown. Whatever our leaders tell us, there is a huge unknown, politically, culturally, globally. There always is, but it's apparent now. We can take that in and meet that unknownness and recognize the indefinable fulfillment that is unknowable. Then perhaps our little time here on the earth, this little blink, will have been used to give rather than to take. Perhaps. We will see. And perhaps that will affect someone someplace. Who knows? No guarantees. Spiritual words are infused with enormous power. Scriptures, sutras of all ages, all time, present, past, future. But if they are taken literally, the power is diffused and the mind gets control. And then that is the beginning of a particular religion, intentionally or non-intentionally. And with that particular religion, there are those who are doing it right, and there are those who are doing it wrong. There are those who are closer to God, and there are those who are further away. And, oh my God, I know where I am, because if God said, and I felt, that therefore means. And this is the tyranny of mind. This is the power of the tyranny of mind, even after great awakening experiences. It's a superego. And it's a lie. You cannot learn to be who you are. You cannot learn to be spiritual. You cannot learn to be true. And our conditioning and our tendency is to study words to learn how we should be, right? And of course we fall short, because the very act of studying words to learn how we should be is already short. It's already a mess. You can study for lots of reasons, and the power to study and the power to learn is totally appropriate in innumerable adventures. You can learn and study maps of all kinds. But once we are speaking about who one is, who you are, then the learning and the studying has to stop. Because who you are is forever bigger than any concept of who you are. The layers of self-torture and fear and doubt and conceptualization that keep our minds from simply sinking into this ground, this field of peace that is always here, that really just is. It's not a Christian peace versus a Muslim peace or a Jewish peace. It's not a spiritual peace versus a worldly peace. That's all several steps removed. The peace that is always here. The ocean of your being. Without learning anything, without going anywhere, without getting anything, without keeping anything. Simply allowing your mind to fall back into that. In this moment, regardless of what the next moment, if there is a next moment, is, or what the past moment, if there was a past moment, was. Just this moment. Just right now. And that's where choice is. There's no choice about the peace. Peace is there. The choice is then to try to keep it, remember it, learn it, give it, imitate it, keep it away, deny it. And that's all mind activity. In this moment, to just fall back into the peace that is your being, to let it have the past, the present, and the future. This is the possibility then to really give up the choice, to imagine that you can leave it. And when that choice is given up, the idea of studying to keep it, or remembering it, is absurd. The impulses may arise from past conditioning, expect them to arise from the collective gene pool, but the choice has been made. This is a peace that is beyond understanding, and beyond really translated, maybe not literally translated, but really translated, means closer. The peace that is closer than understanding. God is closer to you than your own breath.
The skepticism that comes with having been fooled by my mind and tricked and deceived and played games.
So what if you're being fooled by your mind again?
What have I been fooled by?
No, what if now
Oh.
you are being fooled by your mind again? In fact, let's assume you are, just as skillful means. Just assume I am being fooled by my mind again. Then what?
Then my mind differentiates between it fooling itself and reality.
And who are you to know that?
Consciousness that's not limited to my mind, I guess.
You guess? It's like,
I was going to say I think, but...
I guess it's like I think. So is that like knowing the answers in the back of the book? Or is that your experience?
Both.
Uh-huh. So right now, if you're listening, like we were just speaking, if you're listening, you are aware of the activity of your mind and how it differentiates and categorizes and ranks and evaluates and concludes and, and you're aware of what's aware of that. Where is peace?
I don't know that I can describe it.
You don't have to describe it. Just to know where it is.
I guess the other aspect is that I always...
Where is peace now? So if you give this other aspect that has just now arisen, nothing wrong with it, you just give it to peace. Let peace answer it. Not some concept of peace, but the experience of peace. You see, this is what is distrusted. We have been trained to trust our mental constructs more than we trust this field, this vastness of beingness, of awareness. This is the condition. And so saints and sages and teachers throughout all time have directed us over and over and over, and our religious practices, East and West, have directed us to this awakened self. But not self as a concept of self, self as the experience of self. And it's quite easy to access because it's present, it's right here. And it's certainly easy here in this room because we have gathered to access that. So it's what the point is of our meeting. So it's very easy to access it. The tragedy is that then that access is dismissed for listening to the mind again. And that's what you're speaking of, I believe. That the pull of conditioning is so strong. The habit, the groove, the mental groove is so strong that it's like, yes, there's peace, but then there's this. And the invitation is to stop in peace. And this is no small matter. It means stopping in the midst of the tide of 3 billion years, at least, of conditioning. And that conditioning is saying, go. Go to past, go to future. Go to past, go to future. Go to past, go to future. Because that's part of the survival of the body. That's a mechanism of survival of the body. It's appropriate. It's part of how the survival of the body has taken place. But we have gathered in this room to access individually and collectively that which is eternally at peace within each of us. That has nothing to do with survival of the body. Has nothing to do with survival of the body. And those who have experienced a moment of near death or been with someone who is dying and is surrendered in that death, there is a recognition of, in death, in the recognition that may be the last moment of life. Oh, I'm dying. There's peace. Because the peace that you are doesn't care if your body lives or dies. It's peace. And our conditioning is so strong to live, naturally, nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying circumvent that conditioning or get rid of that conditioning. It's natural. It goes with the body. All I'm saying is, see what is deeper than that conditioning. Then that conditioning can play itself out quite naturally, unconsciously, while you are aware of what is at peace, regardless of what happens to the body. Because the body will die, or it will get sick, it will suffer. There will be experience of loss. There will be experience of past and future. But peace is present always. And you just indicated to me that you're aware of that peace. You may also be aware of the activity of mind, but you're aware of peace. So there is hardly anything in our culture that invites us to that peace. And I mean the spiritual culture as well as the worldly culture. In most of the spiritual culture, we're still trying to get somewhere. But this is just for tonight. Don't get anywhere. Don't get more evolved. Don't get more enlightened. Don't get more lovable. Don't get more better. Just stop right here. Give your problems, give your activity, give your search to that which is at peace already within you. And then see for yourself. Then you won't be following teachings literally. You will be recognizing teachings as what arise from your own being. And the teachings that you are drawn to, that you resonate with because there is a self-recognition. In the previous years of my speaking, I have often spoken of what a precious time this is, and this period of the earth, a time of quickening, of awakening, a time where ordinary people, people like you and me, can actually awaken to the truth of oneself without being extraordinary in the sense of sainthood or karma or practice or deprivation or brilliance. Maybe enough of all those things, but not exceptionally so. Ordinary people, that enough extraordinary people have gone before and pointed the way, that now there's a real possibility for ordinary people to wake up. And now at this time of tragedy and sorrow and a recognition of how the illusion of affluence as protective, or democracy as protective, or different from poverty, totalitarianism, all of a sudden the whole world is very close and uncomfortable in the closeness, distrustworthy, distrusting. So it is even more finely tuned, this possibility of awakening. It's actually more urgent. It's not awakening as, oh, that would be a nice thing to do, or as another trinket to add to the knapsack of trinkets. It's awakening as essential. And it's not awakening as just some personal pleasure, some personal achievement. It's a recognition of, and surely we recognize, that the patterns of hatred and blame that go on in our minds are reflected in the world, and they have to stop. And we can't wait for anyone else to stop. Whether will do anything to stop, who can say? We don't know. We don't know. But each of us knows that each of us has the opportunity to stop the cycle. The cycle that's projected inward and the cycle that's projected outward. The battle between ego and superego. The battle between my religion and your religion. My color and your color. My gender and your gender. Of course, this is not just happening in the world, it is happening individually. And so, those of us who are privileged, extremely privileged, to not be facing starvation, to not immediately be facing bombing, to not be facing torture, to not be facing being ostracized or stoned for attending a meeting. We are extremely privileged. And that privilege can be used to stop the cycle, or it can be tossed aside. It can be recognized, oh yeah, I'm really lucky. Yes, but what about what I don't have? What about what I could have? And why didn't they treat me that way? And why won't she or he treat me the way I want them to? Yeah, and why are they causing all that trouble? It's the same trouble. And it has a horrendous momentum. But the momentum is nothing in the face of consciousness meeting that momentum. Nothing. It disappears in a second, less than a second. And yet the familiar habits, the familiar hopes, the familiar deflections, the familiar distractions, somehow, mysteriously, arise again and again. So this invitation from my teacher and his teacher is absolutely radical. It is right now stopping, taking full responsibility to recognize what is at peace right now within you. What needs nothing from the past or the present or the future to augment that peace or prove that peace. What is fulfilled in itself. And in the next moment, to be true to that. Not as some theory or abstraction or club, but as surrender of the mind to meeting what is here. By that, I mean meeting whatever emotion or circumstance or fear or hope appears without resorting to the pattern, the habitual pattern of making war with it.